Well, for some analysis of that speech, we've been speaking to our Europe editor, Catherine Nicholson, who's been following developments in Brussels.
There were two things that Ursula von der Leyen was trying to underline in her first State of the Union address here at the European Parliament. Firstly, she believes that Europe has held it together and cooperated during this pandemic. And secondly, she believes that this is the time when Europe needs to really start page one of building its new future. Three planks to that new future: the economic side, of course, jobs and industry. Secondly, digital transformation in Europe, bringing more broadband into rural zones, that kind of thing. And also the big European Green New Deal. You might remember this was the big policy that was supposed to define Ursula von der Leyen's first year in office. Of course, that was overtaken by the pandemic, but she's come back to that today with a big policy announcement saying that the European Commission is going to put forward an even bigger reduction in emissions in the EU than had been previously put forward, and that got some applause in the chamber, mainly from the Green MEPs. And a couple of other internal EU matters to point out. She talked about the rule of law and respect for democratic values being important. There's been evidence of some backsliding in certain member states. She specifically pinpointed Poland, talking about LGBTI-free zones that certain municipalities have set up that have been heavily criticised by rights organisations and activists. Ursula von der Leyen said these are humanity-free zones and they will not be tolerated in the EU. Quite strong message about one particular issue there. And on migration, of course, we've all seen the fires in the Moria camp in Lesbos. It's really brought migration back to the news agenda. Ursula von der Leyen said that the European Commission will be putting forward new proposals for a joint European response to migration, including new legal pathways to migration into the EU. And she said that she expects all member states to step up on this.
Now, Catherine, you mentioned there the importance of EU member states holding together, presenting a united front. But the EU do have testy relationships with other countries around the world at times. What did she have to say about those ties?
Absolutely. Foreign policy issues are really massive at the moment for the EU. Let's start off with Brexit. Ursula von der Leyen gave this a good 10 minutes or so in her speech. Firstly, underlining her support for Michel Barnier, the European Commission's negotiator. She admitted that talks with the UK have become very difficult at this point, and she said that there is very little time left to secure a deal on the future UK-EU relationship by the deadline, which is essentially the end of October. Now, of course, in recent days, UK government ministers have admitted that they would be prepared to break international law with a new internal markets bill in the UK that would let them override certain parts of the Brexit deal, the withdrawal agreement. Ursula von der Leyen had very, very stern words about this. She said that this withdrawal agreement cannot be unilaterally changed or disapplied. She even quoted Margaret Thatcher, the famous Conservative Party British Prime Minister, the party now, of course, of Boris Johnson, saying that Britain does not break treaties, a direct message to Boris Johnson and his party there. Have to see what they do with that, of course. On other foreign policy areas, there was an expression of support for peaceful protesters in Belarus. There were words about Russia, the poisoning of Alexei Navalny on Russian territory, which Ursula von der Leyen said is now part of a clear pattern of behaviour in Russia, poisonings of opponents of the Kremlin, of interference in Georgia, in Syria, and she said that this is now a pattern of behaviour by the Russian state. There was a joint swipe at Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, talking about states that are retreating into isolation and nationalism. She turned the America First motto on its head and said that we are not about Europe first, and saying that the EU really wants to have a new look at multilateralism, reform, for example, the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, which Donald Trump is taking the United States out of. And on China, Ursula von der Leyen said this is the most biggest, most important relationship in many ways for the European Union, but also the most challenging. And she called on Europeans not to falter in calling out human rights abuses. And she specifically underlined two examples, the situation in Hong Kong and also the situation regarding Uyghurs who, as we know, have been rounded up and detained in camps.